I'm Josh Larky. This is the Dominator. I have 15 season-long lowers for Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. We are going to get right into it before any of these picks or lines move. Let's start with the quarterback position. I'm taking Jared Goff. You guessed it. Lower than 28.5 passing touchdowns. So at first glance, he's had 29 and 30 the past 2 years. So you'd say, Josh, that sounds like a terrible pick. But he played 17 games in those seasons. So if he even misses one game, he probably would have been under the past 2 years. He was higher in just one of his prior 5 seasons from 2017 through 2021. And while we can get this lower 28.5 on Underdog, it is 26.5 passing touchdowns juiced to the under on DraftKings at minus 130. So you're getting a significantly higher number on Underdog to take that lower. Let's now turn to Bo Nix. I'm going to also, you guessed it, high, low. Whoa. We're going lower, folks. We're basically rooting against all these players today. Bo Nix, lower than 17.5 passing touchdowns. So this is juiced to the under on DraftKings in the betting markets at minus 135. So we should already like this play. And let's just dive into why I'm going to take this lower for the Underdog Fantasy Pick'em game. So last year, CJ Stroud was the only rookie quarterback who topped 17.5 passing touchdowns. Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, they were below it. The year before in 2022, no rookie quarterback had more than 13 passing touchdowns. 2021, only Mac Jones was higher than that number. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, those first-round quarterbacks were all below it. Bo Nix was the 6th quarterback taken in the draft. Many had a second or third round grade on him. The supporting cast is terrible in Denver. And then if we even want to go back another year to 2020, Justin Herbert was the only rookie that was above that number. Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts, these guys were all below that number. It's very hard for rookie quarterbacks to throw passing touchdowns. We are going to root against Bo Nix in this area. My third one is Josh Allen, lower than 27.5 passing touchdowns. Now, Josh Allen, I'm going lower than 27.5 passing touchdowns, but he does have at least 29 each of the past 4 seasons. So you might be like, Josh, are you sure? Folks, I'm sure. Because that was with Stephon Diggs. That was with Gabe Davis. They no longer play for the Bills. This is an incredibly high number, 27.5 for a quarterback that could get injured from his goal line rushing and the other hits that he takes throughout the season with a worse supporting cast. There could be receivers not getting open. Maybe he takes more shots. Maybe he gets more sacks. Maybe he has to run more instead of passing more because the receivers don't get open. And then just icing on the cake, 27.5 passing touchdowns is juiced to minus 130 for the under on DraftKings. So bettors themselves, the analog in the betting markets for this fantasy picks game, the bettors also think Josh Allen's going to struggle this year. Lamar Jackson, lower, 3,450.5 passing yards. Now, Lamar Jackson was above this number for the first time in his career last season. So 5 of his 6 NFL seasons, he's been lower. He was healthy for all 16 games that he played in last year, and he still just had 3,678 passing yards. Essentially, he beat the 3,450 by about 1 game's worth of passing. He was fully healthy. And then you look in the betting markets, and they have this number listed at 3,300. This is 3,450. So you're getting 150 passing yards a cushion to go lower. There's just very little wiggle room for Lamar to be above this number when he was fully healthy last year and still only cracked it by about 225 yards. The running game might have more carries going to it now with Derrick Henry on the team. Overall, we're just going Lamar Jackson lower. And then we've got a 5th quarterback lower before we turn to some of the other positions. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence. I'm taking him lower than 3,999.5 passing yards. Basically, I think Trevor Lawrence will have fewer than 4,000 passing yards. Now, this is listed at 3,800 with heavy juice to the under on DraftKings. So the betting markets, the bettors out there saw 3,800 and were like, ooh, that's high. Let's go below it. And Underdog is still at 4,000. Now, Lawrence had 4,100 passing yards in 17 games in 2022. He had 4,016 passing yards in 16 games last year. So he's been higher in 2 of his 3 NFL seasons, but barely. And if he misses 1 to 2 games due to injury, he could fall below 4,000 passing yards. Ultimately, we've got the betting markets on our side here. We've got Trevor Lawrence's profile knowing when he's pretty much fully healthy, he still barely clears this number. So we're just going to go Trevor Lawrence lower than 3,999.5 passing yards. Now, before we keep going, we hit the running back and receiver positions. Let's hear a quick word from the obvious, the best sponsor.
This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader in best ball. When you go to join an Underdog Fantasy best ball draft, it fills very quickly, especially now. It's Best Ball Mania season, baby. Best Ball Mania 5. I can't believe they're at Best Ball Mania 5 already. $15 million in prizes. They're giving out $15 million with $1.5 million to first. Playing in best ball leagues makes you better. It helps train you on player value and strategy. And Underdog offers a lot more than just best ball contests. They offer pick'ems. My new favorite, the golf pick'ems. But they have the NBA pick'ems, baseball pick'ems going on throughout the offseason. Hit the pick'ems, back to best ball, hit the pick'ems. So use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. So they've increased the maximum deposit bonus. It was $100. Now it's up to $125. When you get the Underdog app, use promo code Underworld and go draft your ass off.
Oh, yeah. Draft your ass off. And folks, what we are doing is we are pick'eming. You know what? We're not going to go there. I was going to say we're pick'eming our ass off. That does not sound good. Let's return to the running back position. I'm Josh Larky. This is the Dominator. We have gone through 5 season-long lowers for the good people on Underdog Fantasy, and we've got 10 more. At the running back position, Christian McCaffrey, lower than 5.5 receiving touchdowns. This is juiced minus 150 odds to the under on DraftKings. So DraftKings is basically saying there's a 60% chance that he is lower than this number. He's been lower than 5.5 receiving touchdowns in 5 of his 7 seasons. We've seen just 4 seasons the past 4 years where a running back was above this number. It's basically 1 per season. And while I would say, yes, Christian McCaffrey is the most likely running back to do it, we definitely shouldn't assume with a 50-50 type pick that he is definitely the guy to do it. Another running back that I am going to root against in some capacity for season-long pick'ems, Josh Jacobs. Lower, 1,025.5 rushing yards. He's been lower than this number in 2 of the past 3 seasons, mainly due to injuries and some ineffective rushing. Injuries, they're always going to be a risk with a running back like Jacobs. He gets heavy per-game touches. There's a chance that third-round rookie running back Marshawn Lloyd also siphons some touches. And if you like lower than 1,025, then you'll be happy to know that in the betting markets, under 1,000 is juiced to minus 125 on DraftKings. So the bettors are fully aligned with us here. Before getting to the receivers, which is most of my picks, I do have one defensive pick 'em. I've posted this on my Twitter before, and the line it's still here. So I think we should just keep putting our money towards it responsibly. My Twitter is at JLarkyTweets. Make sure you're following me. You would have learned about this next one months ago. And yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't just do that. It's free, folks. It's free. I also have a win-loss predictions thread on my Twitter. It's my pinned tweet. Check out how I am predicting the NFL season to go down. Anyway, defensive. We're doing Chris Jones, lower, 11.25 sacks. You might be like, why are you betting against the Chiefs' best defender? Well, Chris Jones had 10.5 sacks in 16 games last year. So he was lower than this number despite being pretty healthy and pretty effective. Overall, he's been lower than 11.25 sacks in 6 of his 8 seasons and lower in 4 of his past 5, and he's 30 years old. I don't know what more needs to be said. Let's hit those receivers. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 remaining for the good people. CeeDee Lamb, lower than 9.5 receiving touchdowns. This is juiced to minus 125 odds for the under on DraftKings. We already like that. CeeDee Lamb has been lower in 3 of his 4 seasons in the NFL. Now he did have 12 receiving touchdowns last year, but his quarterback Dak Prescott also led the league with 36 touchdown passes. 6 receivers reached double-digit touchdown receptions last year, just 3 the year before. So you're only looking at a few guys each year that ever reach it. And I just don't want to assume that it's going to be CeeDee Lamb. I think he's likely. But again, we just shouldn't assume with these players they can miss a few games due to injury. Dak Prescott's probably not leading the league in passing touchdowns again. Very similar. We've got 2 more guys with the same number. Jamar Chase, lower than 9.5 receiving touchdowns as well. This is also minus 125 on DraftKings for the under, but the under on DraftKings for Chase is 8.5, not 9.5. We're getting a better number, a higher number to go lower on Underdog Fantasy, promo code Underworld. Now, Chase has been lower than this number in 2 of his 3 NFL seasons, including each of the past 2. Just like I said with CeeDee Lamb, folks, only 6 receivers had double-digit receiving touchdowns last year. Just 3 did it in 2022. Another one is Tyreek Hill, lower, 9.5 receiving touchdowns. This is minus 135 odds, juiced to the under in the betting markets. Everything that I've said for Lamb and Chase applies here as well. 10 receiving touchdowns is just difficult. And Tyreek's been lower than 9.5 receiving touchdowns in 5 of his 8 NFL seasons. Oh, you thought I was done? Tyreek Hill, you're back. Tyreek Hill, you're back in the box. Get back in there. Tyreek Hill, lower, 1,425.5 receiving yards. Now Tyreek Hill, to his credit, has been the first player in NFL history to record back-to-back seasons of 1,700 receiving yards. But he's now 30 years old. He started having calf troubles at the end of last year that started to slow him down. This is listed at 1,375 receiving yards, juiced heavily to the under on DraftKings. So the number is 50 yards higher on Underdog for their fantasy picks games than what the betting markets have it listed at. We should just take that lower when a lower number is already juiced to the under in the betting markets. It's that simple. Stephon Diggs, lower than 7.5 receiving touchdowns. Now, at first glance, you might say, Josh, this is another one. Face value, it feels crazy because Diggs has been higher than 7.5 receiving touchdowns each of the past 4 seasons. He's had at least 8 receiving touchdowns each of the past 4 seasons. But that was with Josh Allen and without much target competition. Stephon Diggs is 30 years old. He's playing with a new quarterback, and he might be behind both Nico Collins and Tank Dell for targets. Significantly enhanced target competition, no quarterback continuity, and it's not 7.5 receiving touchdowns on DraftKings. It's minus 135 to the under 6.5 touchdowns on DraftKings. Again, a better number on Underdog to take that lower in their fantasy picks. 2 more for you folks. Second to last one, then I'll leave you with my favorite one just to rain on a popular parade. Now, this one won't be popular either because people are just sick and tired of me trashing Justin Jefferson, saying that he's not the 4th or 5th best fantasy pick for 2024. I've said that on the Dominator multiple times. I talked about how I'd rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown than Justin Jefferson. Folks, hop in your Underdog Fantasy app right now. In every format on their app, Amon-Ra St. Brown now has a better, higher ADP than Justin Jefferson. I did it. We did it. You did it. Back to pickups. Justin Jefferson, lower than 1,375.5 receiving yards. So he gets the massive quarterback downgrade from Kirk Cousins to either J.J. McCarthy, the rookie, or Sam Darnold. For those pointing to Jefferson being fine, in quotes, without Kirk Cousins in those 4 games last year, well, in those 4 games, 2 of them he was under 85 yards. The Bengals, Green Bay. And then 2 games he had 140 or more receiving yards. Both those games were against the Lions. He got lucky. He faced the Lions twice with Nick Mullins. Turns out, rather than playing the Lions twice over 4 games, mathematically, I looked. He can play the Lions maximum twice over 17 games this year. So we got a bad quarterback for Justin Jefferson compared to last year, but the potential for injury like last year when he was way under this number, he was way lower than 1,375. And it's listed at 1,275 yards on DraftKings. Essentially, Underdog has a number that's 100 yards higher than what you can find on the sports books. Folks, before I get you out of here with my 15th lower on Underdog Fantasy, I'm Josh Larky. This is the Dominator. You can follow me on Twitter at JLarkyTweets. That is the best way to keep up to date with my content. I'll have a couple more articles coming to Player Profiler this month of June. Last month, at the end of the month, I dropped a really good article that I would recommend checking out. I might be biased. I think it's pretty good. It's all about why the Chargers are undervalued on Underdog Fantasy. And I think if you read that article, you'll be hard-pressed to disagree. Folks, let's get out of here, though. The 15th one, the golden boy, the generational prospect, Marvin Harrison Jr., lower than 7.5 receiving touchdowns. This might be my favorite one of the day. This is juiced minus 150 odds to under 6.5 on DraftKings. So it's a full touchdown lower, juiced to the under as well. 16 receivers had 8 or more receiving touchdowns last year. Just 11 receivers had 8 or more touchdowns receiving the year before. Harrison needs 8 to go higher than 7.5. Do I think Marvin Harrison is going to be one of these like 10, 12, 15 receivers that tops this? Maybe he could. I put the chances of that at 30 to 40%. So in a 50-50 type odds pick'em game, like the fantasy pick'ems on Underdog Fantasy, we're just going to go lower. Marvin Harrison Jr., 7.5 receiving touchdowns. To review, Jared Goff, lower, 28.5 passing touchdowns. That's number 1. Number 2, Bo Nix, lower, 17.5 passing touchdowns. Number 3, Josh Allen, lower, 27.5 passing touchdowns. Lamar Jackson, lower, 3,450.5 passing yards. Trevor Lawrence, lower than 4,000 passing yards. Christian McCaffrey, lower, 5.5 receiving touchdowns. Josh Jacobs, lower, 1,025 rushing yards. Chris Jones, lower, 11.25 sacks. CeeDee Lamb, lower, 9.5 receiving touchdowns. Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, also lower, 9.5 receiving touchdowns. Tyreek Hill, lower, 1,425.5 receiving yards. Stephon Diggs, lower, 7.5 receiving touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, lower, 1,375.5 receiving yards. And Marvin Harrison Jr., the 15th lower, 7.5 receiving touchdowns.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.